Welcome to Conservation Unfiltered, a podcast all about the North American model of conservation and your chance to dive into conversations about trends, research, and outdoor activities. It's time to get wild with the 2021 Conservation Media Award-winning host, Jason Creighton.
It's something that's unique to Pennsylvania and certainly to this country. You go other places, they can't believe the amount of public access that we have. It's unbelievable what we're blessed with here in the Commonwealth. I will say though, the number one reason that we'll have properties that come out of our public access is litter. It's a real simple thing. I mean, just be courteous, carry out what you carry in. Just be mindful of those ethics among the anglers.
Welcome back to another episode of the Conservation Unfiltered podcast presented by Conserve the Wild. I'm your host, Jason Creighton, and this is episode number 150, a conversation about trout stocking with Executive Director Tim Schaeffer. In this episode, I'm talking with Tim Schaeffer about trout stocking. Tim is the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, an agency whose mission it is to protect, conserve, and enhance the Commonwealth's aquatic resources and provide fishing and boating opportunities. During the conversation, Tim fills us in on when trout season starts, why the agency stocks trout, and who and when stocking occurs. He also goes into detail about how the hatcheries work, warm water fisheries in the state. The episode wraps up with an important reminder about life jackets and water safety. Hey, welcome back, everyone. And in this episode, as you heard, my guest today, the Executive Director of the PA Fish and Boat Commission, Tim Schaeffer. Tim, how are you doing today?
Jason, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, I really appreciate you taking time out to talk about, fishing and in real specific terms, what we're going to be talking about today, trout fishing that we have, opportunities we have here in Pennsylvania. But before we get into that, this is, I full disclosure, I'm a hunter, I'm an outdoorsman. I'm not a big fisherman. My wife would not be happy if I spent time fishing in addition to everything else I do outside away from her.
Take her with you.
Her and the family. Someday my son will be old enough and we will start fishing. I don't know that my wife would be into that. That would be a whole lot of work for me, I have a feeling, baiting hooks and taking fish off hooks. But this is the first time that I've had anyone from the Fish and Boat Commission on the podcast, long overdue. So for everyone listening out there, what is the mission of the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission?
Yeah, well, thanks for that opportunity. The mission of the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission is protect, conserve, and enhance aquatic resources and provide fishing and boating opportunities. So
with that, you mentioned part of the mission is fish and boating opportunities, but you also mentioned, conserving aquatic habitat. And I think about, the Game Commission in particular, they're in charge of all sort of like, wild species, land bearing wild species in the state, not just game species. So you also, as part of that mission, is also working to conserve and preserve, aquatic species that aren't, necessarily target fish that fishermen might go after.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so we have jurisdictional responsibility for all fish, reptiles, and amphibians in the Commonwealth. So, you mentioned trout at the beginning. So people think of trout, bass, muskies, things that are pursued as a game fish. But we also have responsibility for non-game species, turtles, lizards, snakes, things like that aren't pursued recreationally, but have a really significant part in Pennsylvania's ecosystems. Game Commission's all birds and mammals. We're all fish, reptiles, and amphibians. So
where does the money come from for this agency? Is it my tax dollars that are funding the agency, or where does that money come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's called the North American Model of Fish and Wildlife Conservation. And, we don't receive general fund tax revenue. So to answer your question, no, your tax dollars don't come to our agency. We're funded primarily by fishing licenses and boat registrations. Really, when agencies like ours were set up decades and decades ago, they were founded by sportsmen, and the idea was that as you saw fish and wildlife populations dwindling across the country, you wanted to have a strong state fish and wildlife agency. In our case, we're lucky to have two, one of each, that could work on behalf of the hunters and anglers of the world. And so, in addition to those license dollars that we absolutely appreciate, and I tell our staff all the time, if we can't look an angler or a boater in the eye and say we're using your money wisely, we shouldn't be doing it. We're really investing it on their behalf. But in addition, about a quarter of our revenue comes from a federal excise tax on fishing and boating equipment and motorboat fuel. You mentioned the first time you've had our agency on, and thank you for that. Thanks for having us on. But you may have gotten to it with Brian Burhans, who's my counterpart at the Game Commission. There's a similar tax on guns and ammo that you hear a lot about in the news, that helps to fund the Game Commission. Similar sort of excise tax on fishing and boating equipment, and again, motorboat fuel. That's collected at the federal level, goes into the Fish and Wildlife Service, and gets distributed out to the states, largely based upon the number of license sales and fishing license sales and boats that we have registered here. Also, geography factors into play, but that's about a quarter of our revenue. But really, it's generated by the users, by the anglers and boaters, and we reinvest it on their behalf.
Since you brought it up, I'm going to ask. You brought up that we have two agencies here in Pennsylvania. Really,
Yeah.
I guess three, if you think about the DCNR as well with state parks, that are
Mhm.
managing these sort of outdoor spaces and outdoor recreational opportunities. A lot of states that's rolled into really just one organization, one agency. Do you
Mhm.
feel like it's easier or harder to work as these like separate entities that sometimes collaborate together?
Well, I have to tell you that Brian and I talk multiple times a week. After I'm done with you, I see I have an email waiting for Cindy Dunn, who's my counterpart at DCNR. We all really work very, very well together. One thing that it does allow us to do is really focus on that core mission, and allows for that specificity in our daily activities. So I think that's a real benefit here in the Commonwealth. I'll tell you though, the relationship has never been better, I think, among the three. And we do a lot of work on state park lakes. You wouldn't a lot of places that's the go-to place for. Tomorrow's the opening day of trout season, and a lot of people will be out at state park lakes and in state forests. So we really gladly partner with the folks at DCNR Game Commission. Similarly, there'll be lots of people fishing for trout tomorrow on state game lands.
Yeah, and that's really great to hear that the three agencies are working so well together, to try to coordinate and help each other out really, because there's always that sort of thought like if they're separate they're all doing their own thing, and like you mentioned, that's good, you can stay hyper focused on your mission as an agency, but it really is important, as we mentioned, ecosystems for wildlife. It's also the ecosystem of the whole outdoor recreation experience here in our wonderful state that can really be enhanced if all three agencies are working together.
Absolutely. So the biologists do that. I'll also note, whether it's park rangers or forest rangers or state game wardens or our waterways conservation officers, they also work really well together. And many times, we'll have maybe one WCO that covers a whole county. They'll work closely with the local game warden. They'll work closely with the staff at a state park on really integrating the law enforcement work that they do. And we cross train as well. So we've got a really great water rescue program in Pennsylvania. We gladly and regularly work with them to make sure that those other state agencies have the tools and skills that they need to when they're on the water as well. So yeah, the relationship, biologists, WCOs, administratively, our habitat staff, really couldn't be better.
So you already broke the news for those people that are listening that maybe don't realize, but tomorrow, as of this this episode going out is the opening of trout season in Pennsylvania, the
Yep.
official opening. When does trout season close? Like how? So it opens up tomorrow, April 1st. How does the season run?
Yeah, so you really you can fish all year long. We do ask that on stock trout waters we on those waters we do close the season during the times that we're stocking in the spring, and that stocking that started right after President's Day weekend. Typically, mid to late February was when the stocking trucks hit the waters. But Pennsylvania is blessed with thousands of miles of wonderful naturally reproducing wild trout waters, and you can fish there all year long. I mean, it's just we're really blessed to have the water resources we do. We have about 86,000 miles of flowing water in Pennsylvania, second only to Alaska. We have hundreds of lakes. So there really is something for everybody. And you can truly fish all year long. Now, what starts tomorrow, with beginning of trout season, is when you can, if you like to harvest fish, you can keep your limit of five fish starting tomorrow. I mentioned when we started stocking back in February, we stock about 3.2 million trout annually. We have a network of cooperative nurseries. These are volunteer sportsmen's clubs. About 150 of those, they stock another million trout. So you've got 4.2 million trout that have been stocked by either us or the cooperative nurseries. As I said, you've got just thousands of miles of great naturally reproducing wild trout waters. We have a really thriving aquaculture industry in Pennsylvania also too, where clubs and others can purchase their fish from those commercial entities. So there'll be plenty of fish in the water tomorrow. And I think it's also important to note that trout season begins with the opening day. It doesn't end. I mean, that's really when a lot of the carnival-like atmosphere is there. But there's plenty of great trout fishing to be had all spring long.
So you mentioned that we have, all these great waterways and the native, brook trout in these
Mhm.
waterways that you can pursue all year. So why stock? If we have those natives, what is the purpose of putting these, raised fish into creeks and lakes and that kind of thing?
Yeah, really. So what we stock where in waters that wouldn't naturally have a recreational fishery available. So I live in Cumberland County. So you may have heard of the Yellow Breeches Creek. So Yellow Breeches Creek is a really famous trout stream as you get further up into the headwaters. And the Latort, you may have heard of the Latort. They've got a really robust wild trout population. You get down closer to the Susquehanna River, where I am, in the lower reaches of the Yellow Breeches, you don't have naturally reproducing trout. Westmoreland County, where I know you're based, there simply wouldn't be trout fishing in lots of streams and most certainly in lakes in Pennsylvania without our hatchery system. I mentioned earlier about the state park lakes. They get really warm in the summertime, and they wouldn't support a trout fishery. So, like our counterparts across the country, who have hatchery systems, we supplement populations where they wouldn't normally exist.
So the idea here is to provide recreational opportunities for
Mhm.
fishing, and you're not placing these stocked fish in areas where there's already a sustainable native trout population.
Yeah, we have a very limited number of streams where what our Class A streams, very limited number of those where we do stock, and we evaluate them closely to see if they're having a population impact. But really, the vast, overwhelming majority of the streams where we stock just simply don't have a natural reproducing population.
So how does this work then? Like you
Sure.
get you get these fish as little eggs, and then you raise them, and then
Yeah.
they're put out into the wild. Let's start in the beginning. How do you go about getting these eggs, and then how do you raise them up?
Yeah, so we have so with our 14 state fish hatcheries statewide, we have 8 that are trout hatcheries, and a lot of the eggs that we do is we'll spawn them there on site. And actually I'll make an invitation to you if you'd like to come out and join us. We'd love to have you. It's really cool. I guess the closest one to you would be our Reynoldsdale State Fish Hatchery. But we'd be happy to have you come out and see us do the spawning. So we'll collect the eggs from our brood fish. Brood is just word for the larger, more mature adult fish. We do sometimes have to purchase eggs, which we'll do from a commercial operation. Sometimes you trade between states. Certain states are really good at certain things. Certain states are good at others. So you'll sometimes trade the eggs or the fryer small fish, and then fingerlings are about the size of your finger. But so we'll start with the eggs, and then we'll raise them up, and we have our hatch house, which again, if you come to visit Reynoldsdale, you can see that there, where we raise fertilize the eggs, raise them up in the hatch house, and then when they start to get bigger, you move them outside to our raceways, and that's done, as I said, at the state fish hatcheries that we operate. We look to get them up to about 11 inches long with an average weight of about 0.6 pounds. That's our target. Although we do stock an increasing number of the larger brood fish. This year we'll be stocking about 70,000 of those 2.5 to 3-year-old fish that measure in the 14 to 20 inch range. And about 70% of those stocks will have been stocked prior to opening day. So you have a better chance than ever of catching a trophy fish. Another thing that's really popular, particularly as people think towards opening days, are golden rainbow trout. Some folks still call them palominos, but they're technically a golden rainbow trout, really colorful. We stock about 14,000 of those. About 80% will have been stocked before opening day tomorrow. One thing we'd like to point out is that if you want to find out where those fish have been stocked, go to our mobile app, which is Fish Boat PA, or our website, fishandboat.com. And we have really handy online stocking schedules. So if you'd like to see, whether your favorite water was stocked in advance of opening day, take a look at that. You can also see when we'll be stocking in season. Important to point out that we do stock throughout the spring. So we welcome the opportunity for folks to join us. We can use the help. If you didn't get out on a stocking with us preseason, take a look and join us in season. We'd love to have the volunteers helping us out.
So before we get into that aspect of it, I want to backtrack just a little bit. How long does it take raising these fish until they hit that sort of 11-inch mark where you're trying to you feel they're big enough to be able to go out and be stocked?
Yeah, so really it's about a 2-year process. You get started. It's going to take a while to get the next generation of fish going, but it's our operations are open to they're there 24/7, 365. It is an ongoing operation to produce these fish on behalf of the Pennsylvania anglers, and one that never ends. And also oftentimes think, man, you guys must be really busy the opening day of the day before trout season. Tell you when it's really packed is right before you're going to stock. Imagine having all those hatcheries bursting at the seams with fish. So it takes place all year long, and it's all to get ready for opening day tomorrow.
So really, like, for example, like today, the fish that are there today are some of the ones that are going to be released next year or in 2 years. It's not a short turnaround from egg to stock.
No, it takes a while. And again, if you're there, and you can see the transformation. If you get to the hatcheries, right after opening day, or excuse me, right after we've stocked, you'll see that we're cleaning them out, getting, raceways, moving things around. And they do grow throughout the year, and and their growth rates will depend on water temperature, on feed. You might, and if you wonder, sometimes we'll get the question, why is a hatchery here or there? It's all about the water. It's all about the water source. And again, Reynoldsdale, that's not too far from you, is a good example. We've just got this wonderful geyser of a spring that's there. We have a number of hatcheries that are centered in Center County, not too far from State College, near Bellefonte. Our Huntsdale State Fish Hatchery, not too far from where I live in Cumberland County. And then we have a series of trout hatchery up at Corey, which is not too far from Erie. Again, all those, the thing in common that we have there is the really cold, reliable water source. Our warm water hatcheries, you don't need this cold of water, so you can be dealing with surface water there a little more readily.
So now we've sort of continuing this timeline.
Yeah.
We've raised these fish. They're
Yep.
I say we. I'm not part of it. Your agency
In a
raises
way,
these fish.
if you're a fish, what a way you are. I mean, it's everybody's licensed dollars go into it, so yeah, it really is we.
So in order to get them to the various, creeks and lakes and stocking
Mhm.
areas, it's not like we can just throw them in the back of a pickup truck. How are we transporting these fish? And then
Yep.
not all those places that you want to stock are like right next to a road, right? So how do you get them from the truck
Mhm.
down to a creek, that's maybe a mile from the road?
Yeah, great question. And one of the things I like best about this job is when I get out with our staff to stock. So take your typical day if we're going to be stocking, we'll meet at the hatchery, and we have large, really large trucks with tanks with aerators on them, so we can keep them oxygenated. And they're split up into different. It's not just one gigantic truck, a truck with one gigantic tank. They're split up into different units, so they're different lots of fish. But they'll be loaded onto the hatchery trucks, and then you can imagine the logistics that are included in stocking the number of waters that we do. That I should have gone back. That's a really busy time. Picture being the one who's trying to figure out, how we're going to get those 3.2 million trout to nearly 700 streams and over 125 lakes. And then you throw in, some bad weather or a truck breaking down, you might have to reschedule. But so the trucks are loaded up, and and then all of our stockings are listed online. We list the meeting location for where we're going to go, and we'll typically have volunteers meet us there. Each one of those days is really the coordinator or master of ceremonies is a waterways conservation officer. So the WCO will leave with the truck, meet the stocking crew, meet the volunteers, do a safety briefing. We want to make sure that everybody is safe when they're participating, and then we'll stop. We'll stop along the way, whether it's on a back dirt road in a state forest somewhere. It's a little easier to stock on the lakes, but it's really choreographed, and we know the sites ahead of time, and it's not like you just get there like, I think I'll stock here, I'll stock there. Those WCOs have scouted it out ahead of time. They know where we're going to be, and we also put the fish in places that are accessible. I mean, we want people to catch these fish, and we stock, frankly, on more private land than we do on public land. That surprises a lot of people, and that's through the generosity of landowners. And I would like, if you're a landowner who allows people to fish on your property, thank you. We would not have the opportunities that we do in Pennsylvania without you, and that's something that's unique to Pennsylvania and certainly to this country. You go other places, they can't believe the amount of public access that we have. It's unbelievable what we're blessed with here in the Commonwealth. I will say though, the number one reason that we'll have properties that come out of our public access is litter. That's a real simple thing. I mean, just be courteous, carry out what you carry in. Just be mindful of those ethics among the anglers. But anyway, getting back to your question. So truck leaves, hit the meeting spot with the WCO, have a safety briefing, and then how do you get the fish to the stream? You carry them. I mean, you carry them. We have these large buckets that we'll put some water in, scoop the fish into them, and then we carry them down to the streams and stock them. And like I said, they'll be there waiting for you tomorrow on opening day.
Now, I've heard this from someone who claims to have volunteered, and I have no reason not to blame or not to think he's pulling my chain. But he claimed that they did some float stocking, where they actually got into like canoes and boats and
Yep.
sort of floated down the stream, putting out buckets in strategic places where there were holes and
Yeah.
good spots for fishing.
Absolutely. We really appreciate the clubs that do that with the float stocking. The way that'll work is so when the truck pulls up, you may have, picture uh, almost like a big raft that's got maybe a mesh or a screen bottom where water can get in there. And yeah, it's a great way to spread those fish out. That's another a good reminder is that fish can swim, and people think, oh well, they're just going to stay there and fish fish do move throughout the year. We certainly will put them in accessible holes, and a lot of them do stay there. But the fish really spread out throughout the season and give lots of great opportunities for people to catch them.
You mentioned that, and this is very trout heavy, right? Because we're basically celebrating the fact that trout season opens tomorrow. But at the same time, you've mentioned, and we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about warm water fisheries. We have lakes, and there's more fish than just trout in Pennsylvania. So what kind of fish can you pursue? What do you mean when you say warm water fisheries?
Sure. So the ones that probably immediately come to mind are largemouth and smallmouth bass. Catfish are becoming really increasingly popular, really popular fishery for catfish. Muskies, you have a better chance of catching a muskie now than you ever did in Pennsylvania. And you started the program off asking about our trout hatcheries. You wouldn't catch a muskie in most parts of Pennsylvania if it weren't for our hatcheries, where we raise muskie, and we used to raise them to about 9 to 10 inches and then stock them. But now we raise them to the 14 to 16 inch range, and their survivability is much higher. They're much more chance of survival when you stock them at that higher level, or excuse me, larger size. So you get then walleye. The walleye fishing in particular in Lake Erie is just absolutely off the charts. Really phenomenal walleye fishery, and where we supplement walleye stockings on rivers and lakes as well. So some places have natural reproduction like Lake Erie, but most places don't in Pennsylvania. So that's where we again supplement those walleye populations. And then we talked a little earlier about your favorite state park lake. What a great place to go for panfish. And when we say panfish, perch, bluegill, rock bass, things that tend to be a little easier to catch, and also they're really great table fare if you want to take a couple home and eat them. Really good to eat. Black and white crappie, for example. But that's another the panfish is another dynamite way to get kids introduced to fishing. You doesn't need to be fancy with fancy fly rod for trout. I mean, heck, get a cheap rod and some worms and go out and just catch some bluegills. Your kids will really enjoy doing that.
Yeah, so I'm going to put you on the spot here for a couple questions. One, what's your this could be for trout, this could be for a panfish or walleye, but what's your go-to fish recipe if you're going to eat some fish?
So I'll tell you. So my kids go to college at Syracuse, and anybody who's ever been to Syracuse, New York, has maybe heard of Dinosaur Barbecue. And Dinosaur Barbecue has this great spice rub. So what I like to do is I'll take that spice rub, put it on the trout, and it used to be just frying it up in a pan with some butter. I mean, that's it. I mean, just douse it or put some spices on it and then fry it up in a pan with butter. But my wife got me an air fryer for my birthday last year, and I got to tell you, putting a couple trout in the air fryer, that's pretty stinking good. So I guess there's your recipe. That'd be my go-to. Doesn't have to be complicated. It's really easy.
All right, so now we sort of put the cart before the horse. We talked about your favorite recipe, but how about a tip or two that you could give anglers? Maybe they're listening this as they're driving to go fish for opening day of trout. What kind of tips could you give on being more successful and being able to catch a few more trout?
Yeah, I'd say, well, first of all, you don't need to make it too fancy or too difficult. If you do want to pursue stock trout, take a look at our stocking schedule. That's a really, probably the most surefire way to figure out where the fish are going to be. But take a look at those stocking schedules. I say also don't just fish on opening day. There's great trout fishing throughout the year. So that's maybe the biggest tip, is just realize that we have season long opportunities here in the Commonwealth, and it doesn't just have to be on opening day. I'd say if you're going to get out with family or friends, another tip is to take a kid along. I mean, the research is really showing more and more that the reason people fish is they want to spend time with family and friends and relax. So that would be a real tip is take a kid fishing with you. It's a lot of fun, particularly for those of us who've been doing it our whole lives. One thing that really can bring you a lot of joy is seeing the tug on the end of the line of a kid for the first time. So that would be take a look at those stocking schedules, but take a kid fishing. That's probably the best tip I could give you.
Yeah, and uh, if you are planning to take a kid fishing, take a look and see what kind of local clubs offer kid-only fishing opportunities. There
Mhm.
are multiple just around me that, you mentioned private land.
Yeah.
A stream runs through their private land, and there anyone can fish.
Mhm.
But it's really sort of marketed towards, hey, bring your
Mhm.
kid. We want your kid to fish here.
Yeah, and we had our mentored youth trout day just last Saturday where we opened trout season a week early for kids. That's really popular every year. But it's also note that if you're under 16, you don't need a license to fish in Pennsylvania. And it really I say if anybody hasn't gotten their license yet for tomorrow, it's easier than ever. You can do it on your phone. You don't need to display it anymore, which is a really nice feature. You don't have to hang a plastic holder on your hat. You can buy it online and just save it that way. And again, that all those licensed dollars support what we do. So if you're going out there tomorrow and enjoying those stock trout or the wild fisheries that we manage on behalf of the Commonwealth, we do it with your support. We just truly thank everybody for the funding that they give us to do the job we love on behalf of you.
So before we go, because I know you're a busy man, and I want to be very cognizant of the time I'm taking from you. But so before you go, we want to make sure while we want people out there, we want people fishing, taking part in outdoor activities. We also want them to do it in a safe manner, right? So, what are some things that people should be doing whenever they are fishing, whether they're in a boat or they're on the shore? Like, what are some things that they should be really paying attention to making sure that they're safe?
Wear your life jacket. I don't care if the listeners remember anything I said during this interview, but wear your life jacket. In Pennsylvania, we actually have a mandatory life jacket wear on all canoes, kayaks, and boats under 16 feet from November 1st through April 30th. So, we've had a really mild winter for the most part this year, but that water is still deadly cold. The statistics really bear it out. Most of our accidents happen in the summertime when there's more boating, but most of the fatalities happen in the cold weather months. So, a lot of people will be out tomorrow in canoes and kayaks or john boats fishing for trout. And that's a great way to do it. But please wear your life jacket.
Yeah,
The other thing I'd say,
that's a good
yeah,
one.
and then building on that is just be really conscious. The rules in Pennsylvania for boating under the influence are the same as driving under the influence. So please do not boat impaired. Uh, Rules are the same, and we're always on the lookout for impaired boaters. So please don't drink a boat, and please wear your life jacket.
That very well said. Like I said, I want people to be outside. I want them to take kids and other people with them. Fishing is a great option to have an outdoor recreational opportunity, but we need to make sure we're doing it in a safe manner. And
Mhm.
there would be nothing worse than you going out or you taking people with you and not everyone coming home safe and sound. So we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can as safe as possible when we're enjoying the outdoor activities that we have available to us here in Pennsylvania.
For sure. And 80%, 80% of the fatalities Pennsylvania and nationwide are a result of people not wearing their life jackets. They're easier to wear than ever, they're more comfortable than ever. And also, we talked a lot about kids today. Make sure that the life jacket fits. I'm sure you can remember, I know I can, getting in a boat when you're a kid and you've got some big bulky life jacket. Well, the law is that they have to fit the people that are on the boat. In addition, if that life jacket doesn't fit the kid, they could go in the water, it could come up over their head, suffocate them. We call it the touchdown test to figure out if it works. So have the kid put the life jacket on, have their arms like you're motioning for touchdown. If you can pick them up by their lapel, by the top of that life jacket, and it doesn't come up over their head, it fits them. So make sure they're wearing a life jacket, make sure it fits everybody on the boat.
That's a great tip, and I hope everyone takes that tip to heart. Tim, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a good day tomorrow that gets out on the water, and good luck to all of them.
Well, thank you, Jason. I appreciated the opportunity, and good luck to everybody tomorrow and all season long.
Well, that'll do it for this episode. Big thanks to Tim for coming on to talk about this. That spoiler alert, tomorrow, if you're listening on the day that this episode was released, which is March 31st, tomorrow is Pennsylvania's trout opener. So to all you anglers that are going out, good luck, right? Enjoy the time spent out there and bring home a few fish. Definitely some good meals that can be made and some good times that can be had when you're out there on the water. And of course, I want to really reiterate what Tim had to say about water safety and wearing life jackets. Make sure that you're safe when you're out there. It's a big crusade of mine in the hunting space to really try to get people to, have proper firearm safety and proper tree stand safety, wearing their harness. It's the exact same thing when it comes to water. It can be a dangerous activity, and we want to try to make it as safe as possible when we are taking advantage of that opportunity. So wear your life jacket, have proper water safety, and make sure someone knows where you are. So just in case something happens, they can get you the care that you need. Until next episode, and especially do this tomorrow, get outside, take someone with you, and of course, stay wild. Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters. And here's how it works. It lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. You can even take conversations with your fans to the next level with Q&A and polls.